This is the True Racers Podcast. Come along with us as we discover racing's past, present, and everything in between. Welcome to the True Racers Podcast. I'm your host, Greg Campbell. On today's episode, we have a guest that I've been wanting to interview for a long time. He's a man who not only had a great driving career, but became one of a handful of car builders that found success on dirt as well as asphalt. His early apprenticeship with notables like Pete Hamilton, Ray Stonkus, Gary Baird, and E.J. Trivet gave him the base he needed to go on and find success in his own right. He has an amazing story, so let's talk with our guest, Sandy Goss. Well, Sandy, first off, I want to just say thank you for being here with us today. I've been wanting to do this interview for a long time because you've just done so much in racing that I think people are going to love to hear about it.
Well, I appreciate that, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you and do this for all the fans.
Well, good. Well, thank you. I guess we'll start off with just when did the racing bug bite you? Not necessarily as a driver, but just as when did you notice racing?
Well, when I was a kid, and I'm talking about 10 years old or so, my daddy took me to a dirt race out in Dallas, an old Dallas dirt track out there. And, boy, I just fell in love with it right there, right then. So as I went on a little bit, I don't remember exactly how I got hooked up with them, but I would hang around the shop with Bill Hemby and the 111 Skeeter. And I got to go into the races with them. I wasn't even old enough to drive. Mom would have to take me down there. And me and Bill would go to Chattanooga on Friday and spend the night, and then go to Cleveland on Saturday and run dirt. Asphalt on Friday night at Boyd Speedway, and then run Cleveland Saturday night. I did that before I could even drive a car.
Gosh.
George Flowers owned that Skeeter, and George liked me for some reason. And but another thing is, I was riding down the road on my bicycle one day, and I rode by this house, and I seen these guys that had a Skeeter outside. And I said, God, there's a Skeeter right there. I just drove down the driveway and befriended those folks and got to go into the races with them. Come to find out, I was at my grandmother's funeral, and my mother was talking to a guy, and I come walking up, and she said, "You don't remember my baby, do you?" He looked at me, and he looked at her and said, "Stella, you ain't going to believe this, but he's been going to the races with us for months." And I didn't even know he was my cousin. And so from then, I got to go into the races with him. I worked in a shop, Carline Abney's garage, right there at the underpass and on Atlanta Road and South Cobb Drive. And Charlie Paget worked in there. I mean, I was 16 by this time. Charlie Paget worked in that shop. Huh. So I got to following Charlie. You know, he run Athens with a Skeeter. Mr. Massey owned that Skeeter. It said a good deal and a good deal more. He's a used car salesman. And I was at the gate where they cross going in when they come in, pulling the cars in. And Charlie seen me. He said, "Get that boy in here." And Mr. Massey told that man, said, "This kid's with me." Told me, "Get in the back of the truck and stay there." So I would drive to Athens by myself, 16 years old, to watch the Skeeters race. And Mr. Massey would get me in the racetrack, in the pits.
Huh. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and that's the year Charlie won 31 out of 32 races. Wow. Charlie Burkhalter beat him one time.
Man.
So, but we had that number 3 that Charlie drove at the Peach Bowl at Carline Abney's. So every afternoon when I'd get off work, I'd push the race car in and work on it. It had an old wishbone rear end in it, you know, that old Ford rear end. Didn't have a quick change at the time. Yeah. And, of course, we tore it up every week. I had to take that thing out to fix it, and it'd take a while to do all that stuff. And it had a V8 Chevrolet engine in it, and the transmission, we never kept it in there. But anyway, long story short, that was the start of all that.
Huh. When did you decide that you wanted to drive a race car?
When I was 10 years old.
10 years old.
When Daddy took me to that dirt track out in Dallas, I said, that's what I want to do. I want to drive a race car and be a fireman.
Wow.
I drove race cars, and I worked for Cobb County Fire Department for 37 and a half years. Man. I held every position in the fire department from volunteer to deputy chief. I was a deputy chief when I retired.
Gosh, and you have done a lot.
Yep.
What was your first race car?
My first car that I ever had was Daddy had an old 49 Ford Club Coupe. And he took the back seat out of it, made a fishing car out of it so he could lay his rods in there without breaking them down. So he put the back seat back in and gave me that old 49 Ford. And shortly after that, I bought a 57 Chevrolet. I worked at Dog and Suds on Atlanta Road. I made 35 cents an hour, plus tips. I bought it's used, but I bought a 57 Chevrolet, and I paid cash for it, working at 35 cents an hour. Man. I religiously saved my money. I wanted that 57. I wanted 55, but I ended up with 57. And I took my old 49 Ford and took it over to Southern Auto Parts, Stanley Southern, and we built a race car out of my first car. I got pictures of my first car, and my first car is a race car. It said Hodge Army Navy Store on the side of it.
Oh, man.
Yeah, and a guy named Benny Sanders drove it at the Peach Bowl. But my first race car, when I come home from Vietnam, I told my daddy, I said, Daddy, I'm fixing to build a race car. And I'd love to do it with your blessing, but I'm fixing to build a race car. Mm-hmm. And he said, okay, son, I get that. And I'm with you. I'll help you. And he did. He didn't know about race cars, but he knew fabricating. He said, if you'll let me put the roll bars in it, I'll go along with it. And I said, well, hell, I'll not put them in no ways. So he did. And I drove for Barra Shell. Mm-hmm. We had two cars, a 58 and 59. And Bubba Brand drove the 59, and I drove the 58. And I built that car, carried it to the Peach Bowl, and Peach Bowl paid 10 places. It paid $100 to win the race, and each place going back dropped $10. Second was 90, third was 80, and 70, and so on. Right. They paid 10 places. I run 11th and get a dime. The second week I didn't get a dime. The third week I run 10th, and I got $10.
You thought you were rich.
Oh, yeah. The fourth week I won the race. And I was downhill from there.
You was a millionaire then, wasn't
you? Well, I won. And I won several more races that year. Mm-hmm. After that, Peach Bowl closed. Yeah. So that's about the time Dixie Speedway was starting up. And me and a bunch of guys went up and talked to them and talked them into starting a B class and bring all these Peach Bowl cars in. There's a lot of them. Yeah. They didn't have nowhere to go. They didn't have nowhere to run. I was one of the original drivers that run the first race ever in a B class car at Dixie Speedway. Huh. So
now this was on dirt, right?
Yeah, this was on dirt. I know about dirt. So that's what got me started and all that.
All right, Sandy, you got on dirt at Dixie in Limited Sportsman, and then Dixie paved in 73, and you had moved up to late model by then. So when it was asphalt, you started running the late model with a 64 Chevelle, I believe.
That's correct.
And I wanted to ask you about you had driven a car for Clint Brannon Ford. I think it was a Falcon. How did that all come about?
They used to park next to me on pit road almost every week. We got to be friends back and forth, and they were having trouble making their car handle. And I suggested to them, I said, why don't you take that car to Baird and Trivet and let them work on it, and they'll put you to handling that. My car was a Baird and Trivett car, and that's the best thing that you can do. It'll be money well spent, I promise you. Well, they did. And at the time, I was a test driver for Baird and Trivett. So the first time out with it, I was supposed to test drive it in a practice session before the races. Well, I was late getting there for whatever reason. And I run in there and jumped in that car, and out I went down pit road and through 1 and 2, went down the back straightaway wide open into 3 and 4, wide open down the front tri-oval. And the first lap I run was a half a second faster than they'd run all day. That's how I got that ride. Later after that, they asked me, said, "You want to drive this car?" And I said, "Yeah, I'd love to." So I got to driving for Clint Brennan Ford. And I built them a new Mustang. And long about that time, they were going to quit racing. Well, they did quit. And Keith Newbern wanted that Mustang. It's still new. And I told Brandon Ford, I said, "Why don't y'all trade car to give him that Mustang? You take the Camaro. You can sell that Camaro. You won't ever sell that Mustang." And they had a wrecker. They took a 4-door wrecker that they took the wrecker mechanism off and put on a new chassis and give me the other chassis, and I built a tow truck out of it, made a utility bed on the back and tire racks and everything. So they quit. Well, I was down there one day, and I said, "Have y'all have any luck selling the Camaro?" And they said, "Well, no." I said, "What do you want for it?" And they told me. So I said, "What do you want for the tow truck?" They give me a price on that. And I said, "Remember, I'm the one who built that tow truck for nothing." And they give me a little better price on it. And I told them, I said, "Tell you what I do. I buy both of them, race car and the tow truck, if you finance every dime of it." He got the phone, called the bank, said, "I'm sending Sandy down there, give him a payment on his race car, give him a payment book." They financed every dime on the race car. I'm the only person I know that had a damn race car that was financed through the bank. I had a $337 a month payment. Now, this is in 1977.
Wow.
$337 a month.
Ooh.
And I didn't have a sponsor. I had to make my money. I worked for the fire department. I made 3 times more money with my race car and did my job.
Wow.
That's just a fact, because I IRS audited him one time, and that's what they come up with. Anyway, the big race I had it making is a 150-lap race. I sat on the pole. Firestone has some new experimental tires. And they come over and said, "Don't run them tires." He said, "We run them at Birmingham last night and they come apart. Don't run them." I said, "I ain't got no choice. That's all I got. I'm running these tires." So when it qualified, it's kind of funny. When it got ready to qualify, it was hot. It was like, 105 degrees. Oh, it was awful. Hot, couldn't even breathe. And there was one little old cloud in the sky. And Jack Guess was my crew chief. And I told Jack, I said, "Jack, take the car, get it through inspection, get it ready to qualify on pit road. I'm watching that cloud right there. When that cloud gets over the racetrack, I'm going to come run and jump the car and qualify." So I watched that cloud till it come over. I spotted where I said, "Well, I got about 2 or 3 minutes here to do this." And Jack pushed the car to the pit road, did his normal, "I can't find my driver. Where's he at this racing scene?" Carried on. And that's all put on. And I jumped in the car and went out, qualified, sat on the pole, qualified at a 1909. And the record was like an 06 or something. So when the race started, Jimmy Smith was clocking me. He said, the first 50 laps, he said, you'd run an 09, an 06, an 08, an 07, an 010. I mean, a 10, a 6, an 06, a 7, 10. For the first 50 laps, he said you was within 3 or 4 100s per lap.
Wow. For
the first 50 laps.
Now, Jimmy Smith was the Firestone guy, right?
Jimmy Smith was the Firestone guy. Right. So he went down there and he asked Jack, he said, when y'all pit, what are you going to do? He said, going to put right side tires on it. He said, show me the tires. He said, all we got is these old tires here. He said, got a slash across them where they're coming apart. He said, don't put them tires on that car. He went to Jody Ridley's truck and got 2 right side tires and rolled them down there. Now, I didn't have radios. I couldn't afford that stuff.
Yeah.
So when I led the first 77 laps and pitted, well, I didn't know they put them tires on the car. I thought they put them 2 junk tires on the car.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I went in the corner. I pedaled it when I went in the corner because I knew it wasn't going to stick.
Yeah.
Well, I thought, well, that wasn't too bad. It feels pretty good. So the next corner I did a little harder. And in a minute, I'm back up to speed. I said, man, them old tires are doing good. Mm. Anyway, I won the race, and my fine friend Max Simpson protested me, and I won the protest. I was legal. And I got a newspaper article over here. I'll show you where it says I won the richest race ever run in the Southeast. Wow. I took my money from that one race. I went to the bank in Unadilla, Georgia. I like $10 paying my loan off. Oh. I put $10 with it, paid my loan off. At that point in time, my race car was free and clear. My tow truck was free and clear. Wow. And I was in business. Man. That's what put me on the road.
That's pretty good. Now Dixie, ran a few years there asphalt, but then they dug it up. What do you remember about that time? About maybe why they dug it up? What was your take on that?
I think Bud Lunsford had a bunch to do with that. Mm-hmm. I think he bought the track. Bud did, and he didn't like the asphalt, so he dug it up. Yeah. He was a dirt man.
Well, Mickey Swims told me at one time that he bought the track halfway through the season, and it was paved the rest of the way. And he said the last race of the season, he looked down there in the pits, and there was Billy McGinnis, Jody Ridley, Russell Nelson, and he said one other guy, and I can't remember who he said it was. But he went down there, and they told him, they said, Mickey, you're going to have to, find us some sponsors or we can't run up here next year. And Mickey was like, well, I can't do that. And he said, if I find you a sponsor, he said, I'm going to have to find everybody a sponsor. It ain't fair for me to just do it for you. And so they said, well, I guess we can't race up here next year. Well, then Bud had kind of talked him into, digging the asphalt up. So Mickey got on the, the thing to dig the asphalt up. And he said every time he went to stick it in the asphalt, he stopped. Bud's like, what's the matter? He said, man, I just don't think we need to do this. And Bud's like, well, how much money have you made this year so far? And he said, well, I ain't made a whole lot. He said, well, there you go. And they said the funniest thing, they looked up and coming around that road, that comes around the back straightaway, they saw this Corvair. He's flying through there, pulled up, and it's Jack Deemer. And Jack's like, what in the hell are y'all doing? Yeah. And Mickey said, well, I just, I'm trying to make money.
Yeah, I get it.
And so, but anyway.
I never had heard that, though.
Yeah, there was a lot of that. But, yeah, I think you're right. I think Bud wanted to go the dirt way, and I think he kind of convinced, Mickey to do that. And
speaking of Jack Deemer ran a Pete Hamilton race car. Mm-hmm. And he bring it in the shop frequently to be worked on. Well, typically I did work on it. So when Pete closed his shop, Jack Deemer called me and said, Sandy, I need you to do some work on my car. I said, okay. Well, about that time, I was kind of broke. I needed some money. I didn't really have no good place to do it. In my little old shop, it was small. Yeah. In my daddy's backyard, in fact. So anyway, Deemer brought his car down, and I worked on it. First thing you know, I'm building a building and hiring help, and I'm in the race car business. Wow. So Jack Deemer is instrumental in me going in the building business. This is after I quit driving.
Huh, I never had heard that.
Yeah, Deemer's the reason I built that building and went in the race car business.
I tell you, Jack Deemer had a big impact on all the racing around here.
Yeah, he did.
Dirt and asphalt. Mm-hmm. Excuse me. Now, Dixie's over with, and everybody kind of gravitated to Middle Georgia Raceway.
Yeah. And
you just talked about a big race you won down there. You probably did better at that track than you did anywhere. What was it about that track that just kind of lent to you doing well?
I don't really know. It just suited my style driving, and I had to run on a budget. I didn't have no sponsors. And in fact, 1977, I didn't just run at Middle Georgia. I run all over. I got to going to different tracks, Mobile and Birmingham and Nashville, going up in North Carolina. And anyway, I run a 6-state area. New Smyrna.
Yeah, Pensacola.
Pensacola. And in 1977, I won 9 races, which is pretty respectable.
Yeah.
But I run second 22 times.
Oh, man.
I run second 22 times. They beat me with money.
Wow.
I couldn't put new tires on the car. Mm-hmm. In fact, it's kind of funny. One year, 77, 4th of July, I went to New Smyrna Beach. And they run 6 races. I won 3, run 2 seconds and a third. During that whole time, that whole week and all down there, there was a little parts truck where they sold the tires and some racing equipment and whatnot.
Right.
And the guy come over there from that parts truck, and he said, "We've been watching you, and you ain't put no tires on this car since you've been here." I said, "Mister, I can't afford no damn tires. I come down here on a credit card." And when I checked in the motel, the guy gave me the bill and said, "Here, your bill is so-and-so." And I handed it back to him. I said, "Looks like you're busy. I'll catch you later." And I walked out. I didn't have no money. That's a true story. I walked out.
Boy, you can't do that now.
And I've already made enough money to pay my motel bill. And he said, "Tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you a tire." I said, "You're kidding?" He said, "No." I said, "Can I pick it out?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Guys, get the right rear off his car." And went over and they give me a right rear tire. Wow. I put it on him. I left there after winning 3 races, 2 seconds in the third, drove all day to get to Birmingham to run a 100-lap race. Jody Ridley won the race, and I run second by half a fender. A guy named Alton Jones, me and him run side by side for, I don't know how many laps. And I burnt my right rear up. I should just let him go because about three laps later, he spun out by himself. He burnt his right rear up too. Anyway, Jody's right front was going flat, and my right rear was burnt up. So I got beside him, and we go in the corner, and we do this. His front would push, and my rear would come out, and our 2 back bumpers was just about touching together. And then when we get through the corner, we'd straighten up and down, and we'd go. Anyway, Jody beat me by, I don't know, 1.5 feet. I run second, so I had a pretty good weekend.
Now, at that time, Jody was like the poster child for Firestone.
Oh, yeah.
So he had the good Firestone tires.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, kind of back to Middle Georgia there for a minute. Did you run the 500-lap race there?
No.
You didn't run that race?
No.
That was probably the best race I had ever seen down there.
Really?
And it was hard to keep up with because guys would get out of their car because they was tired.
You sure you're not talking about Birmingham?
No, this is. I know which one you're talking about. You're talking about the 400 lap. I think Jack Ingram won that race at Birmingham. You're talking about.
I was in that race.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's the day it was so hot.
You finished like in the top 5, I think.
I did.
Yeah.
But it wasn't in my car.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was so hot. Rat Lane was the first one to bail out. Mm-hmm. And if you had a driving suit on, they'd come get you, get in this car.
Yeah.
And I don't think nobody, maybe 1 or 2 people was in their car they started in. Everybody was passing out. It was so hot. Me included. I wasn't in I don't remember who got in my car.
That's the way the Macon race was.
That's the way the Birmingham race was.
It was hot that day.
Oh my God, yeah, it was.
The Macon race wasn't that hot. It was just long. It was a 500-lap race on that big old half mile. They was pouring them guys out of the cars when they got out. But yeah, I remember that race at Birmingham. You did really good in that race. We'll be right back with more from our guest, Sandy Goss. If you enjoy listening to different podcasts, have you ever thought you'd like to have your own podcast, but thought it's not possible, it's too hard, or too expensive, I just don't know what to do? Well, there's a tool available that allows you to record and edit your podcast right from your computer or your smartphone. Anchor.fm, which is available in your app store, will distribute your podcast for you. so that it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many more. You can also make money with your podcast with no minimal listenership. Anchor supplies everything you need to produce a podcast all in one place. So download the free Anchor app or go to the website at anchor.fm, that's Anchor, ANCHOR.fm, and get started today. So stop dreaming and start podcasting. All right, Cindy, I want to talk about now about the shop that you were involved in out in Norcross. I think it was you, Pete Hamilton, Ray Stonkus, Baird and Trivet, Johnny Thomas. Y'all are all in one building out there. Talk about how that started, how you ended up there, and just how that whole deal worked.
Well, Baird and Trivet had helped me with my car, and I had done some test driving for them and so on. And Johnny Thomas, like you say, he is next door to Baird and Trivet. Johnny Thomas built my race engines just about my whole racing career. He built all my engines. And Pete Hampton was on the end. Baird and Trivet built themselves a new shop, and they moved. Long about that time, working for the fire department, you had to work a second job. You couldn't make a living on one job.
Yeah.
And I was looking for a part-time job, and Baird and Trivet wasn't hiring at the time. And I was over at Pete's shop and talking about a part-time job. Long story short, they hired me. So I'd work at the fire department 24 on, and I was off 48, 24 on, 48 off. And the 2 days I was off, I worked at Pete's shop part-time. Mm-hmm. Now, when I worked there, they put me on chassis a lot of times, because I was good at putting in roll bars, and I was fast at doing that. So that was one of my main jobs. Of course,
you learned that from your daddy, right?
Yeah, exactly. But whatever job they needed done, I did it. Like I said, Jack Deemer, the Day Chevrolet car, when it come in there, most of the time I did all the work on it, which later put me in business. Like I'm talking about, after Pete closed the shop down, Jack Deemer called me and said, "I want you to do some work on my car. You did it down at Pete's anyway. What's the difference?" Yeah. Well, which is basically true. Anyway, I ended up doing all their work, and after working for Jack Deemer, I ended up building a building and going in business, and this is after Pete closed the shop. But when I worked there, we had a falling out, and I ended up quitting without going into the details. But Pete called me one day and said, "I got a deal for you." And I said, "What is that?" He said, "I need a chassis." I said, "What's it got to do with me?" He said, "I want you to build it." I said, "Okay." He said, "You come to my shop, get my jig, take it to your shop." I had a little shop out behind my daddy's house. He said, "I need a chassis by Friday." I said, "Okay." So I went and got his jig, and I built the chassis. So from there, I got to building the chassis for them. So all the cars that they were selling, I built them at my shop. Didn't nobody know that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I built them chassis forever.
Wow.
In fact, I kept one about halfway built most all the time.
Yeah.
Just in case they called one right quick.
Yeah.
I could take it to them. So that's what got that. Now Pete was years ahead of his time. People don't know this, but Pete was smart. Mm-hmm. I mean, he knew every bolt, every nut. He wasn't a fabricator like Ray was, but he was smart. He knew. He taught me things that the average racer never knows the whole career, and that's what sort of got me going when I went in business. I already knew all that stuff Pete taught me. He kind of took me under his wing, and I worked there for a long time.
Now we were talking earlier, and you were talking about when Pete wanted you to build those chassis. You know, it took you like 80 hours to build one.
Yeah.
And then you figured something out that helped you. Talk about that.
Yeah, it would take a little over 80 hours to build a chassis, the way Ray was doing it. When I started building them, I could build one in 36, 37 hours. And the reason I cut 50 hours out of it was my daddy was a supervisor over the jig shop at Lockheed Aircraft Company. Hmm. So here I am building this first chassis. Daddy's sitting there watching me. And the hardest part about that whole chassis was hanging the steering sector. Because all you got is midair.
Yeah.
You got nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And getting that steering sector in exactly the right spot was difficult. So once I got through, Daddy said, why don't you make you a jig? I said, what do you mean? He said, let me show you. Make you a jig to locate that. Next time, all you got to do is put the jig in here and you'll be done in a minute or two. Well, he was right. I could hang that steering sector in exactly the same spot, jiffy quick.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as I got to doing other stuff, he'd say, make you a jig to do that. The rear spring hangers, you know, everything from there on. I had jigs hanging all over the walls.
Yeah.
So the chassis got quick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember that about your Marietta shop. You had a lot of jigs always hanging on the wall. I thought that's the first experience I'd ever had around somebody that built cars, you know, that I was around them a lot, and I noticed that you got a jig for everything.
I did.
When did you move over to that Marietta shop?
Well, I had that little shop out behind my daddy's house.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I worked on Max Simpson bought the car Buck Simmons drove. I hated in there working on it. Hmm. I worked on Luther's car. I built Luther a car. Tony Reed, that's how I met him. I built him a car in there. I think I put the interior in one he was trying to build at the time. And I had a lot of big names come through that little old backyard shop. Mm-hmm. And Deemer was instrumental. He said, you need to build your building. And I did. I built a 40 by 80 building in my backyard and later added 21 feet to the back of it. So I had 101 by 40 metal building in my backyard. Paint booth, you entered it from inside the building. Mm-hmm. That way you could, in the middle of the winter, you could run a chassis in there and paint it, pull it back out, and never get out in the elements.
Yeah.
And it worked out good that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now you kind of started building, like you say, the cars at Dixie and Middle Georgia and stuff like that. But once all those tracks kind of went away, you'd got into dirt a little bit, building dirt cars. And I think you were a C.J. Rayburn dealer.
I was, yeah.
And you built a lot of winning cars. I think Stan Massey and Leon Sells, you know, they had some of your cars and they were just unbeatable in them sometimes.
Tony Reed, Stan Massey, I did build a lot of cars. Jack Pennington, built him a car.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I a couple of guys up in North Carolina built him some cars.
Now you had kind of got away from the C.J. Rayburn design and sort of came up with your own thing there for a while.
I did. I got to playing around on some graph paper. Mm-hmm. And having a 10th grade education, I wasn't smart enough to know all the ins and outs mathematically.
Yeah.
But I sat there and figured it out. You know, I said, well, if I move this here and I move that there, I wonder what'll happen. And I'd do it.
Yeah.
I remember one time Ed Massey called me. And Ed said, Sandy, I got a problem. Why don't you hit me with it? I said, okay, what is it? He said, this new Rayburn car I got. He said, something wrong with it. I said, what is it? He said, when you push it down in the back, it stays down. When you pull it up in the back, it stays up. He said, don't bounce. You try to spring it up and down. He said, don't bounce. Wherever you push it, it's like you push it down, it stays, or you pull it up and it stays. I said, Ed, I ain't got a clue. I never heard of that. He said, it's driving me crazy. He said, CJ don't know what to do with it either. So I studied on it for a day or two, and I called Ed. I said, Ed, I think I figured it out. Here's the deal. This is what I think's going on. What I think's going on is the top shock mount is in the dwell area. In other words, just like you run a 6-inch connecting rod on the piston because it's longer than the 5.7 rod. And that makes it, when it gets to the top of the stroke, it stays there longer before it starts down the other side. And that gives it more power. I think that is in the dwell area, and it won't bounce. It's just dead. It's there. Mm-hmm. I said, this is what I'd like to do. You bring that car up, set it up just like you're going to race it. Bring it up here with 2 more springs and shocks for the back. and I'm going to remount the top of them shocks where I think they ought to be. Take it up there and run it. If you don't like it, bolt yours back on. You're right back where you was. You won't lose a thing.
Yeah.
Man, that car showed up next morning. Here we go. I remounted them things. They come got it, went up there, and went out to practice. I was holding my breath.
Mm-hmm.
Stan come in. He got out of that car and he come over and looked at me and he said, "Gosh, you're a damn genius." He hugged me. He said, "Candy," he said, "they're in trouble tonight." He said, "That thing will eat the damn ground up." And it was. From then on, he was on it. He won it. He won that night, and from then on, I fixed that car where nobody else in the country could.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I tell you, that happens a lot. You know, these guys that, you know, been building cars for years, and, you know, they'll just miss something. And then it'll take somebody that's, you know, doesn't even have anything to do with it.
Yeah.
Can figure it out sometimes. And but you got to be smart enough to understand what it's doing to figure out why it's doing it.
Yeah, I thought about that a lot. And then when I seen it, I said, "Oh, yeah, I can tell you right quick that's what's wrong with it." But as soon as I could look at one, pretty much tell. But I built a lot of cars for a lot of good people who won a lot of races.
Mm-hmm.
And I probably done as much or more for racing in this part of the country as anybody. Not just from the driving standpoint, from a builder standpoint.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And
well, you know, you can just about count on one hand the car builders that were successful with dirt cars and asphalt cars.
Yeah.
And you're one of those fingers.
Yeah.
There's very few of them.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's something you can hang your hat on for sure.
Yeah.
All right, Sandy, you had kind of set the dirt racing world on fire, at least around, you know, the Atlanta area. And then you kind of got into building, working on that, what you'd worked on asphalt cars your own, but you and Dave Mater had got together and came up with a Mater-made chassis. How did that come about?
Everybody in the world knows old Big Rodney that worked around the racetrack and so on. And Big Rodney worked for me. Mm-hmm. And him and Dave were buddies. And one time David was coming through Atlanta and he stopped in to see Big Rodney, and one thing led to another, and I ended up building him a car. And it had a Dillon front clip on it. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot about that clip I didn't like. And I changed everything around. And the cars they got fast. I mean, you know, they were good.
Yeah.
And Dave won a lot of races in them things. So we got to going everywhere, and that's sort of how that started. It just kind of come to be. I mean, you know, I don't really know what said, okay, we're going to go into car business together, and it just evolved, I guess.
Yeah, that's about how half the thing is in racing.
Yeah.
Well, I know that Jerry McCart, I was working for him, and he had bought an old car from Dave. I mean, it was an old car. And we ran it for a whole season on All Pro. And the car was it began to flex. You know how some of them old asphalt cars got to that steel, started getting a little weak, and they started flexing. And you didn't know from one race to the next what you were going to have. And so we were at Lanier one night, and I think one of your cars was up there. I can't remember who was driving. It may have been Dave. And he won the race that night. Well, Jerry's mama said, "You need a race car." Said, "You know, you're beating your head up against the wall with this thing." She said, "Go down there and talk to Dave and find out who's building his cars." So he went down there, and it was you. You had built that car. And so I think Jerry talked to you that night and may have given you some money that night, but you built us a car, and we started running Concord with it that next year. And that car was good. I mean, it was, you know, after that car we had from Mater, I think that car was about 10 years old.
Yeah.
But that thing, I mean, you know, it did whatever you wanted it to do. If you made a change on it, you could tell. And we were running really good and ran them cars we ran your cars for like 2 or 3 years, I think.
Yeah.
And we had wrecked that thing one night. Didn't tear it up bad enough where we felt like we had to bring it back to you because it bent rear ends and stuff like that. But we didn't think it bent the chassis. But we found out later it did. But it just got to where we couldn't do nothing with that car. And then I think y'all had kind of got out of that part of it and really wasn't building those cars anymore. And we'd be getting our ass kicked by Rich Bickle, every race. Ended up getting a car from Rich Bickle, but that car we got from you, that really took us to the next level. We were able to learn how to run, with the big guys.
Yeah.
And actually won, a few races with it. And so it was good to have what we felt like was a real race car at the time, because the car from Mater was just one and he'd won a bunch of races in that old car.
Yeah.
But it was just too old. It just didn't have nothing left in it.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then you started at Lanier, kind of, you started when it was dirt, you built cars for Smiley Rich and some of those guys. And then when they paved it, you kind of continued building cars, and Smiley Rich was probably your flagship, I think.
Yeah. Well, that car I built, Smiley, we won every week, to the point to where Bud come out and made a rule, said, if you win the race this week, the closest you can start to the front next week is 10th. If you qualify on the pole, you'll start 10th.
Yeah.
If you qualify 5th, you'll start 10th. If you qualify 9th, you'll start 10th. If you qualify 10th, it'll be 10th.
Yeah.
Well, that was to stop people from winning races week to week, back to back, which nobody did from there on, except us. We did it 3 more times. Drove them crazy. But that car, everybody in racing knows little Jim Barfield.
Yeah.
And little Jim Barfield worked for me for 16 years. Me and him knew what the other one was thinking instantly. I mean, we just did.
Yeah.
And when I was building that car, I'm sitting there looking at it, and he come over, he said, I can see the wheels turning. What are you thinking? I said, I ain't sure yet. He said, this is what I think I'm going to do. And I put some special rear end suspension in that car. And it was similar to the old truck trailing arms.
Right.
Except it mounted center line of the rear axle. But it went on an angle up to some brackets that were adjustable, like a truck arm did, similar.
Right.
And had a big old round panhard bar that went around the drive shaft and whatnot. And the only one, there wasn't but one like it. And in fact, one night I come around the car and I always kept a cover on it. Drove him crazy with that damn cover. And Ray Stonkers was laying under the back of my car looking, and I kicked him on the bottom of his foot, and I told him, get your ass out from under there. And he did. I said, you're the last person I want looking under that car.
Yeah.
I said, Ray, you taught me. You know what I'm doing. You just ain't thinking. You and Pete taught me. Anyway, I beat him with that car. I mean, we run everything. We run 2 seconds and 1/3. Rest of the time we won.
Yeah. That
car was amazing. And give Smiley credit, he never wrecked it. He never bumped up the car. It was just like it was on day one.
That last race he ran in it, that first Budweiser Super Bowl, when he got in that fire and the car caught on fire. Yeah. That was probably the end of that, which they changed the cars the next year anyway. They had to go to stock bodies, and that changed a lot, I think, on the chassis and everything. So, because I know we had, when I worked for Billy McGinnis, we had a Ronnie Hopkins car that we had run up there, and we'd struggled with it all year long. And we'd finally come up with some things right at the end of the year at that last race that, and we went up and won that, the late model race. And, but then they went to the, the stock appearing cars the next year, and we had a couple of Dillon cars that we started running, but it was like starting over again, trying to figure the track out and the cars and all that. But yeah, you were the man there for several years at Lanier.
I'll tell you a funny story about that. The championship race. I told Smiley, I said, let me figure something out. And I got me a pad and a pen and went and sat down in my van. And I've thought about this many times since, and I can't answer the question because I don't know how I did it. But I come back and I said, Smiley, you need to run second in the second heat to be on the pole. I had mathematically figured it out. And luckily, we're in the second heat. So they're running heat. He's got a damn straightaway lead. I'm jumping. I'm hollering on, screaming on the radio, slow down. You got to run second. So on the last lap down the back straightaway, he stopped about the pit gate. And I said, you can't stop. You got to run second, not third. Keeps the momentum going. Go. Well, the guy come by and passed him on the race. We run second, and the fans went crazy. And the story I heard was Bud said something happened to that car. So when they was figuring out the lineup, and once they did their mathematical, we were on the pole. Mm-hmm. Bud said, there ain't nothing happened to that damn car. He said, that Goss figured it out, I guarantee you. Because he told me later, Bud said, you're the only man in this entire pit area that was smart enough to figure out what to do.
Wow.
And it was, I did.
Yeah.
I figured it out.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I knew how they did that at the time, but I swear I can't remember what it was. But we won the race, and the car that was faster than us couldn't run the top. He had to run in the bottom. Mm-hmm. I can't remember that guy's name. But that guy run that bonding company on that car. So I got on the radio and told Smiley, I said, Smiley, get out of the top and get in the bottom or you're going to get beat. You got to stay in the bottom. Mm-hmm. And he did. So he'd run by us on the outside and just slide up. Well, then we could outrun him down straightaway. The next corner, he'd slide up.
Yeah.
And we ended up winning the championship race.
Yeah.
So,
well, I'll tell you, you can count on one hand the chassis builders that were good at building dirt cars and asphalt cars. I mean, you can count them on basically one hand. And you're one of those fingers because you figured it out on dirt and you figured it out on asphalt. And it was because, all that training you had from running your own stuff, being with Pete Hamilton. I think the main person that affected you more than anything was your dad. He taught you a lot of stuff about building cars, building those jigs and everything. And he was a big influence on you. And so was Pete Hamilton and Ray Stonkus and all those people, Baird and Trivet and all those people you were around.
Baird and Trivet, it got me started. Mm-hmm. EJ was smart. Now don't take nothing away from him.
He was.
He was an old time racer. He was one of them guys who never had nothing, didn't have no sponsors, and everything you had to build it. Yeah. And that's kind of the way I was. I never had a sponsor.
Yeah.
My whole career, maybe $200 here, $300 there. But I'm talking about I never had no help. Mm-hmm. I worked for Cobb County Fire Department, and my job financed my race car. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's just a fact.
Yeah.
I got audited one year by the IRS in 77 and 78. And the guy started out by saying, well, engines is going to be your biggest expense. I said, no, tires are the biggest expense. He said, no, engines. I said, tell you right now, you don't know what's going on. So anyway, they told me I owed them a bunch of money, and I refused to pay them. And I went and protested it, and they come back, and the guy said, well, what's the problem? I said, he misadded the call. Calling my numbers up right there. He misadded it up by $4,000. I don't owe you no money.
Wow.
And the guy said, well, he did miss it, didn't he? I said, yeah. He's missed everything. He don't know what he's talking about. He don't know what he's doing. So we discussed that for a while, and he said, I tell you what, if you pay us $300, I'll mark it paid and cancel 78. I said, you got it. And that's how I got out of that deal.
Oh, man.
But what I figured out during all that was I made 3 times more money with my race car than I did my job. Yeah. And that's just a fact.
Wow.
Of course, that job ended up being great as it got better and better. Mm-hmm. But the people, they were several people that built their own stuff, ended up building cars.
Yeah.
Billy Clanton built his own stuff. He built some cars.
Yeah, and he started out working for Roscoe Smith.
Yeah, Roscoe's another one. He built his own stuff. He built cars.
Well, at one time, if you didn't build your own stuff, if you wanted a dirt car, you went to Roscoe. If you wanted a pavement car, you went to Baird and Trivet.
Yeah.
There wasn't no Ed Howe or Ray Dillon or any of those guys.
Yep, I get it.
I'll tell you something about Baird and Trivet. To me, their biggest strength was front end geometry. Exactly. They could take just about any race car and work on the front end, and that thing would be 10 times better than it was. And, they built that, they took that car that Leon Archer had that he won all them NDRA races with that year, and they worked on the front end of that thing, and that's when he went to winning. And that car got stolen.
I remember that.
Yeah, and I think everybody knows who stole it, but we're not going to talk about that. But anyway, the car was gone. And so he called up Baird and Tribbett and said, you want to give me another car? So I've been winning all these races. Said, you need to give me a car. And they said, look, that's how we make our living. We don't make our living giving cars away. If it's a really good car, you shouldn't qualm about paying for it.
Yeah.
Well, he didn't get one.
Yeah.
And he won a lot of races. And don't get me wrong, Leon Archer was about the best there was on dirt, but he didn't have that dominance anymore after that. And the cars had changed some too during that whole.
Another thing about them is EJ built himself a frame rack. And I remember I was at Harris, North Carolina. I'd run Birmingham on Friday night. Mm-hmm. I'd get home by daylight. That's before the 20 went all the way through. You had to run 2-lane roads through a lot of that. And I'd get home by daylight. I'd work on my car till about 2:30, 3 o'clock. I had to leave because I run Middle Georgia on Saturday night. Mm-hmm. Well, I'd come home, unload the car, work on it a little bit. I had to leave early the next morning. I run Harris, North Carolina on Sunday afternoon. Wow. And I never missed a day's work at the fire department.
Cool.
But I'd wreck my car at Harris, North Carolina. And when we come in, Jack Guess at the time worked for Baird and Tribbett. So they had the key to the shop. We just carried it straight to the shop, put it on the rack. So when they come in that next morning, Gary SCG said, I wonder how Sandy done. He said, he didn't do too good. His car was sitting on the rack. The back end was swung way over. EJ fixed that thing slick as the button. He pulled the car back. It was dead right. Man. And so, I mean, he was just smart.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah, he worked hard, too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they did some incredible work up
there.
Yeah,
they did.
More from our guest, Sandy Goss, as the True Racers podcast continues. You know, I always say at the end of every episode to support your local racetrack. Well, it dawned on me that some listeners may not know about their local racetracks. Well, there's a website that can help you out. It's called getinthestands.com. You can go to this website and put in your zip code, and it will show you all the racetracks around your area. Now, we're talking dirt tracks, asphalt tracks, road courses, and even drag strips. So find your local racetrack on this website and get out and enjoy some good old short track racing. Again, that was getinthestands.com, your racetrack directory. All right, Sandy, you had a real successful car building business, and you got hooked up with some old high school buddies, Steve and Freddie Michaels. Tell me how that kind of all came about and how you got hooked up with them and kind of where it went.
I was working in the shop. Of course, at that time, I was working by myself. Didn't have any help or anything. So Steve Michael come by the shop. Like you said, went to high school with him, known him forever. And he'd bought a car from somebody and wanted me to do some work on it. I told him I would, but it's going to be a little while. I was backed up. But he agreed to that and brought it in. And he come by one day to check on his car, see if he got anything done to it. And we got to talking. I said, lay down behind that car and look up through there and tell me what you see. He did, and he said, ooh, that thing's been all pieces. And I said, yeah, I don't know if I can help you much. Long story short, he ended up buying a new car, and the race was on. So we got started racing. Had some decent drivers drive for us. Smiley Rich drove some, and Dave Mater drove it quite a bit, and Junior Niedecken out of Pensacola drove it, and Tammy Jo Kirk drove it. She won the Snowball Derby in one of my cars. But we run. I think we had 4 or 5 cars and 3 or 4 motors. And the engine shop was just this side of Chattanooga, Tennessee. Mm-hmm. Chickamauga, I believe is what they call it.
Yeah.
Hendrick Race Engine Design.
Yeah.
That's where they did our engines for us. So there's a lot of days the engine would have to go to the engine shop. Well, it's a day killer to go up there and back.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't get no work done that day. And I worked at the fire department 24 on, 24 off. I never missed a day. And me and little Jim kept them cars up, just the two of us.
Wow.
Kept them all going. We'd come in with a car and it'd be tore up. The next car, we'd already have it ready. I mean, between me and him, we was on it. He was the absolute best employee you could ever ask for.
Yeah.
And he was just a blessing to me. So that's how all that got started. And
now, where did they get their money? How did they race?
Their daddy was in the glass business, Michael Glass Company. And after school, they'd go over and work in the glass company, him and his brother, Freddie.
Mm-hmm.
And when they got out of high school, they went in with their daddy, and then their daddy retired. And they took the business over, and they run it for a long time, and they sold it for a lot of money. I know a number, but I ain't gonna say it.
Yeah.
So they had a no-compete clause for 5 years. We didn't have nothing to do, so we raced. Yeah, it wasn't ever much of a problem. If I needed something, I'd just tell them, and we got it.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, it was. And then after the end of the 5 years, I went right back in the glass company business and did that for a little while and sold it again. So
were they pretty good guys to work for?
Oh yeah, they were super good.
Mm-hmm. Now y'all did a lot of late model racing that time, but then you tried your hand at bush racing for a little bit, didn't they?
Yeah, they wanted to do that, and I wasn't an experienced car builder. And we went up to Felix Savalas' shop. At that time, Kenny Wattis drove for Felix Savalas, drove the Dirt Devil cars. I think they won a championship with it. Old Birdie was their crew chief.
Yeah.
And we went up there, and Kenny carried us way off in the middle of nowhere to a building about the size of Arizona. And we went in that building, and they had 2 or 3 cars sitting there, and we ended up buying 2 of them. Brought them back and got them ready to go, carried them to Daytona. We didn't make the race. I begged them not to go. You can't take a motor and put a plate on a restrictor plate. You got to have a restrictor plate motor that's built for that. And they didn't understand that. They wanted to go. I distinctly remember Freddie. I said, "You talk about dollaring you to death. That'll $100 you to death."
Yeah.
And I was needing something from the parts truck, and I needed Freddie. And I finally found him. I said, "Freddie, give me some money." And he said, "How much you need?" I said, "Just give me $500 or $600, and then I'll catch you a little bit and get $500 or $600 more." Jokingly. Well, I said, "Don't give me $100 at a time. I ain't got time to run you down. I got, give me more than $100. I'll be accountable for it." So he laughed. He said, "You wasn't kidding, was you, about $100 you did?" I said, "Oh no, this is just started. This is day one.
Yeah,
we're gonna be here a week. Just hang on." So we didn't make the race. And the next week was Atlanta, and that's the year it snowed us out, everybody out, and it was freezing cold. And I told Steve, I said, we need to put some antifreeze in that car before we put it in the truck. He didn't want to do that. He said, "NASCAR won't let you put antifreeze in a car." I said, "NASCAR ain't gonna pay for that damn thing when it busts the block. Put some antifreeze in that car."
Yeah.
And he had an old boy that was kind of overseeing the engine part of it, and he didn't. He said, "NASCAR won't let you do that." And I said, "Look, my recommendation: put some antifreeze in it." Well, they didn't do that and busted the block. So I was kind of disappointed in that. But yeah, we tried a little bush, not much.
Yeah.
It was very expensive.
Now Mater was driving then, Dave Mater?
Yeah. Yeah, Mater drove it.
Okay. Yeah, that's an expensive.
Oh yeah, we bought one of the reasons they wanted to buy them Dirt Devil cars was they'd won a championship in that one car. They'd run it all year, so it was good to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we carried them things to Daytona and pushed it through inspection, and they went crazy over that car. I said, that car run all year last year. They said, that's last year, this is this year. You got to fix this, and this. Mm-hmm. The biggest thing, they didn't like the quarter panels. They was flared out. So I carried it back down there, and I took a die grinder and split the back bumper cover and pulled the quarter panels in and put me a piece of aluminum behind it and pop-readered them back together. I didn't Bondo it or nothing till I pushed it through there so I could plainly see it.
Yeah.
And David Rogers was parked there next to us, and he's from Florida, and he'd loan me the templates and stuff so we could get everything back right. Funny story about him, I went down there on 4th of July week in 77, and we run 6 races at New Smyrna Beach. Mm-hmm. I won 3, run 2 seconds and a third. Wow. And David Rogers run, wherever I run, he's first car behind me. Huh. And when it was at the payoff, when they're getting ready to go home, he said, I'm glad for you to see you going back to Georgia. I'm so glad, I'm so tired of looking at the back of that little old Camaro, I don't know what to do. Kind of funny. We got to be good friends over it. But yeah. It's the first time I'd ever met him. But yeah, we went down there and we tried our best, but just wasn't to be. We just didn't have the horsepower. Yeah.
Then I guess they kind of went back to late models after that.
They did.
And tell me a little bit about Tammy Jo Kirk. She was a good driver. Tell me about how it felt winning the snowball with her.
Well, I had actually closed my doors by the time they'd done that. Little Jim had took that operation over. Mm-hmm. I can't take any credit for that. That's Little Jim 100%, man, and he done it. And but it's in one of my cars. So he planned it right. I mean, you know, tire management, and he kept her on the lead lap. And at the end of the race, he had new tires put on it, and he beat him.
Yeah, I tell you, Little Jim's a smart guy. He's probably one of the smartest guys I know in racing.
Yeah,
and he flies under the radar too. I don't think he gets the credit he deserves.
Let me tell you what, there is not a more honest person in this world than Little Jim Barfield. He come to me one day and he said, today's my mama's birthday. If you don't mind, I'm going to go take her to lunch. So I might have a little bit of an extended lunch today. I said, okay, that's cool. You could set your clock by him being on time, period. So in a few minutes, I looked around, he's back in the back working. I thought he was going to take his mom. I said, I thought you were going to take your mom to lunch. He said, I did. And he's gone about 30 minutes. It's just the way he was. And if a lot of times I'd be painting the car, and we had 3 sets of sawhorses, and he'd help me get it up on the tallest ones. Mm-hmm. And then I could walk under it, and get the bottoms of the bars and the frame and all that stuff. Yeah. Then I could take one end at a time. I was strong enough to do that by myself, and walk it down, you know, to get it down. But he didn't ask for no extra pay for staying an extra hour. I mean, he was just a good guy.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, he was.
All right, Sandy, one of my favorite subjects, and I'm not going to call it cheating. I'm going to call it competitive advantage. Tell us a couple of stories about some competitive advantages you had over the years.
You mean like with tires?
Yeah, or, anything, maybe getting through tech or anything.
Oh, yeah. Well, I was always messing with the NASCAR people. And one particular time, I was in the shop, and I said, I wonder. And I took, air cleaner element is 14 inches in diameter and 4 inches tall. And it's got a little wire mesh thing go around it. You know what it looks like. Yeah. I took a die grinder and cut that little wire mesh off. Then I took a die grinder and cut that paper element out. I stretched that thing out. That blooming thing is 40 foot long. That paper element is. Well, I put about 15 foot of it back. And so the folds wasn't real close together. They had a pretty good, like a 3/4 inch gap or better between each little fold.
Yeah.
And then put the wire mesh back and everything. And the guys that owned us with Michael Motorsports, Steve and Freddie, they had bets whether I could get the thing through tech or not. And I was always doing something like that. Anyway, it's at Nashville. And I pulled up on the scales and took the hood off, and the inspectors looked at that thing and said, "What is that?" I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "That air cleaner." I said, "What's wrong with my air cleaner?" "You can't run a homemade air cleaner." I said, "I have. You know that air cleaner is not homemade. That thing's custom made by a friend of mine, Jose, down at Tijuana, Mexico." And when I said that, they went crazy. Threatened to fine me $5,000, all kind of stuff. They said, "Don't you move that car till you put a brand new air cleaner on it." And I knew that was the end result. And I already had a fellow standing there with one in the box. And I just motioned, he handed me the box. I took the brand new air cleaner out, and I said, "That one okay?" And they looked, I said, "Yeah." I put it on, put the top on the other thing, and put the old one in the box, handed it back to my friend. And they looked at me and said, "You get this car out of here." And away we went. Poof. I didn't no more get going good till one inspector looked at the other one and said that SOB just got through here with something we didn't check. Nothing. He got us involved in that accident. We never looked at nothing. And the two guys on the car just boo-hooed. They just died laughing. I was way down yonder. They two couldn't call me back then. I was gone with it. But I would do something like that every week, whether it was make a stencil and paint my own tires, or I remember one time I was at Mobile, and don't never take your car through tech when they don't have nothing going on. You always take it through when they're really, really busy, so you can get away with more stuff. And this particular day, I wasn't thinking to push that car over. They wasn't doing nothing. So you had to run a 4-inch height in the front and a certain height for the spoiler, and they had a little gauge, check all of it. One guy went to the front, one guy went to the back, and I looked. I'd always stand there at the driver's door, and if it's doing the front, I'd reach in and get the top door bar, and I'd pull up. I could get it up 1/8 of an inch easy enough, and I run 3 7/8, 4 inches was the rule. And on the back, I could take that top bar, and I could push down. Them old springs in the back was so soft, I could push it down 3/4 of an inch, standing at the door. And then went to each end of the car, and I backed up. Whoa, wait. And they stopped. "What's the matter?" I said, "You got to check the front, or you got to check the back. I don't know where to pull up on this bar or push down on this bar." And they got tickled, didn't check either one. So get out of here. I pushed the car off, got my little sticker, and pushed it off. We was at Lanier and had a big race. Big long line of cars to come around the corner, and one of the boys went down there and come back and said, "They're checking tires." I said, "Oh, they ain't good." So when the car got up there, Lex had his durometer gauge checking tires, and Joe Collins, he called him over and he'd check it, show Joe the gauge, he'd check it, show Joe the gauge. And Joe got made it and said, "Something wrong with them tires." And they said, "What, it don't have the Lanier sticker on them, the stamp on them?" They said, "Oh yeah, they got Lanier stamp on them, something wrong with them." So we pushed the car. He said, "You get the car out of here." So we pushed it off. And one of the boys saying, "We didn't get our little sticker. We didn't get our..." I said, "Shut up. They know we've been here. Don't worry about it. It's okay. Everything's fine." Well, long story short, we ended up blowing the motor, so there wasn't nothing to it. But the next week or two was the snowball. And of course, it wasn't a NASCAR race, but they were there.
Yeah.
I was walking down pit road, meeting them coming head on, and walked up, started shaking hands. How you doing with everybody? When I shook hands with Joe Collins, he squeezed my hand and pulled me right up in his face. He said, "Young man, don't you never piss on my head again. Tell me it's raining." I said, "Mr. Collins, let me tell you something. You were fixing to lose a car at a car count. You was fixing to be down a car. These people I work for were on the verge of quitting. Everybody in that infield's got soaked tires, whether you know that or not. And I'm trying to run straight up. Keep up running straight up. So I soaked my tires too, and that happened to be the first time I ever done that. And you caught me. I'm trying to help you. And he kind of looked at me and said, I didn't know that. I didn't think about that. I said, you need to police that a little better. So that was into that deal. But I'd done some crazy things. I was at Greenville Pickens. I was eating a hot dog. And we was parked down in the first turn, towards the first turn. I'd went to the concession stand, which is about halfway, and then I'd walk down to where they come off the fourth turn. That's qualifying. I was sitting on the pit road wall eating a hot dog. And I got to looking at one of the NASCAR inspectors. He was standing off just a little bit. And I thought, we just standing there. I wonder what he's doing. I went over and asked him, I said, what are you doing? He said, I'm watching you. I said, what do you mean watching me? He said, oh, it's my week to watch you. I said, what do you mean your week? He said, oh, somebody's assigned to watch you every week. I said, you got to be kidding. He said, no. So when I found out, it was damn game on. I really went to messing with them then. and it about got out of control. But
Now, I was always a tire guy. I always did the tires, so tire story is always interesting to me. Tell me the one about marking tires.
Well, if you're a tire guy, you know they had a little old paper stencil that they'd hold up a tire and spray paint it. And once I got my first legal set of tires, within 20 minutes, I had a stencil. I could make one pretty quick. Mm-hmm. And I had every color paint on the truck that there was. So it was at Jeffco. And they painted them that week with Caterpillar yellow, of all things. Well, I didn't have any Caterpillar yellow. So sent a boy out to find some paint. He come back and said, can't find no paint. I said, oh, man, what are we going to do now? I looked around and studied on it for a minute. I said, each one of you boys right there get a tire apiece. All four of you get one tire apiece. And the guys that own this car, they didn't ever say nothing. They let me do what I was going to do. They never did say do or don't. They just let me run.
Yeah.
And I rolled in 4 tires to the back of the tire truck. They're busy mounting tires, blah, blah, blah. And I walked around the truck, and I walked in there, and I said, where's your stencil you marked the tires with? And they said, it's laying right there. I reached and got it. I said, where's the paint? He said, oh, it's right here. Got the paint. I took their stencil and their paint and walked around the side of the truck and painted my 4 soaked tires. And once I got the 4th one paint, I said, y'all get them tires out of here, go. And I walked back around there and shooting the bull with the guys, and I laid the stencil and the paint down. And Steve Freddie Michael said, now that's the damnedest thing I ever seen. Pretty funny.
Yeah, I tell you, those kind of things were part of it back then, and of course it's not as much now. I mean, there's always going to be that. They're kind of staying on top of it more now than they used to be. But
we was at Pensacola for a snowball, and had a Camaro, and had long, normal Camaro rear end short.
Yeah.
Well, they made these long quarter pounds that's 6 inches longer than the regular one. That's what we had on. The car looked good that way. You could see it a mile off where it had long, short quarter pounds on it. We had long quarter pounds on it. Had an inspector named Fritz. Somebody been complaining about your car, them long quarter panels. I said, my quarter panel's not long. He said, well, I'm going to measure them. I said, okay. So he went to hook the ruler in the door seam, and it wouldn't stay. I said, here, I'll hold it for you. Okay.
I see where this is going.
So he drug it to the back. Well, I just backed it up 6 inches, and kind of had the handle. I just backed it up 6 inches. He said, well, there ain't nothing wrong with that. That thing measures right. I said, okay, good. So, I mean, what are they going to do if they catch you,
Oh, I know. I mean, they try to make it like now they're going to throw you out of racing forever if they catch you doing something. But it's the same old cat and mouse game. I don't think it'll ever change.
No.
Some of the inspectors are getting a little smarter, but the thing about it, the racers are getting twice as smart too. So
I bought a fuel can from I was no NASCAR driver, and I can't think of his name, Hancock, I believe. Anyway, where the handle comes up is actually the vent for it.
Yeah.
And at the top of it had a 1-inch hole and a little lip around it and whatnot. Well, hell, it was a plug. So when you pick the can up, you take the plug out, and it had an 1.5 inch hole. Mm-hmm. So when you dumped it, it dumped faster. Well, then you had to put the plug back in before you got back over the wall with it.
Yeah.
I mean, they something like it going all the time.
Oh, yeah. That ain't
dumping lead out of your ballasts or
yeah.
whatever.
Now, on the Cup side, they've gotten pretty hefty with these fines and throwing people out. So there ain't as much of that going on as there was, but it's still going on because I mean it's competitive. You know, it's hard to win them races, and
yes, sir.
You look for every advantage you can. All right, Sandy, you decided to kind of get away from racing. You had, like you telling me, you kind of burned the candle at both ends till you run out of candle, and you got your house built out here, and you had a nice shop down there with all your racing stuff in it. But you decided to kind of get into the woodworking business and build some stuff for your house. Tell me about how you decided to take that project on.
One morning I couldn't get out of bed. I was working 120 hours a week. Now, there ain't but 168 in a week.
Yeah.
Between my fire department, 24 on, 24 off, and 12, 14 hours a day in the shop, it adds up to 120 hours a week. Mm-hmm. And there was a time through there where I took on building some houses. I was a contractor. Mm. And me and my sister bought a subdivision, built it out. But I quit, closed the doors. And I'd started this house out here. I worked on it 9 years before I moved into it. And I've had every piece of this house in my hand a minimum of 3 times.
Wow.
Little Jim and Sammy framed it for me. I traded a lot of stuff. Got my garage doors put in and repaired the guy's race car for it. Jimmy Lee Ezel, I fixed his car and he put the plumbing in for me and later bought a car from me. Hmm. And I done some bartering back and forth. But I built a little shop out back, 2,200 square foot shop. And my wife said, boy, you can get rid of all this equipment. I said, I ain't selling that stuff. I spent my whole life paying for it. Now, I did sell my Heliarc. I figured I might not need it. And I did sell my Bridgeport milling machine. I still got the rest of it. It's all in that little shop down there, stacked up. But I decided I was going to do some woodworking. And I started trying to figure out how to do it. It's the same, but different.
Yeah.
You put a mark on a piece of metal and you cut the mark. You put a mark on a piece of wood and you better cut on the long side of the mark, or it'll be too short and you can't weld the gap up. It's got to fit.
Yeah.
So once I figured that out, it wasn't nothing to it. First thing you know, I'm building furniture. I'm building cabinets. I'm building a little specialty stuff. And I just go down there and I didn't have nothing to do. I'm retired. Yeah. I retired from Cobb County Fire Department after 37 years. So I needed something to occupy my time. I was used to going wide open.
Well, I know people can't see it on this podcast, but just to let you know, I have seen it, and it's incredible. Bob Vila or this old house doesn't have anything on Sandy Goss. This is some of the finest woodwork I've ever seen. You took that on, I know, like you did your racing. And
you believe this or not, I used to get up early, and that's back when I smoked. And I'd go out on the back porch, screened-in back porch, and had a TV out there. And I'd watch a new Yankee workshop. And he would be doing something. And while he's explaining what he's doing, I'm paying attention. I'm looking to see, did he cut that with a fine-tooth saw blade or a coarse-tooth saw blade on his table saw? I'm looking beyond what he's saying or teaching. Yeah. And he literally taught me how to do woodworking, and he don't know it. I was way ahead of what he was telling, keeping up with what he was doing. And that's, I've made some pretty incredible things, quite honestly.
Yeah, some of the stuff I've seen, it's incredible.
It is.
It's stuff you'd see. I don't think you see any better work in any kind of store or anything.
And the funny thing about that is the people next door. I live on a 6-acre lot, and there's a 4-acre tract between me and the fellow next door. He's got about 6 acres, and these two ladies, they bought it and split it, got 2 acres each, and they were clearing the lot. And I went over and asked the loader man. I said, what's the chances of getting some of these logs taken down, these trees taken down? He said, we're going to chip them up and put them in the front yard. I said, you going to chip that red oak up? He said, yeah. Well, about that time, the ladies that own that lot come up, and they were talking. I stepped back. I wasn't trying to interfere, get in their conversation, but I did hear him when he told that lady, he said, that fella right there wants to get some logs. And she said, give him a couple of logs. So he's pushing them things down, pushing them down. And I ain't getting no logs. I got a bobcat and I got a hook on the bucket where I can pick a log up with a chain and carry a long log. Mm-hmm. So in a little bit, I looked around there and had his old Caterpillar bucket up in a tree, leaning against a tree. And he did that because his cylinders leaked down. If you just raise it up, it'd leak down. And I walked over. I said, what's the matter? He said, it's running hot. I blow the radiator hose. I said, oh, he said, I'll lose a half a day's work going down to Yancey Brothers to get me a hose. I said, I might have a hose to fit that down in the shop. He said, yeah, right, like you got a hose for a Caterpillar. Well, as chance had it, by golly, I had a hose. I just had to stick a hose, cut off how much you want. I carried it up there and throwed it on the track. I said, there's that hose that I don't have. Oh, yeah. So he starts taking the neck off of the radiator to replace the hose. And he's got a damn wrench reaching into that thing scalding hot. I walked down to the shop, put me a bunch of extensions together, and I had a extension at that time about 3.5 foot long, and I put a swivel socket on the end of it. I said, stick that socket on that bolt. I took the thing off standing on the ground. I never got up near that heat, took it off. I said, come on down to the shop, and I'll buff it off with a wire brush and give you some silicone to put it back. Or if you won't take time, I'll make a gasket. I got gasket material. I'll make you a gasket. He said, silicone will be okay. So I'll put it back together. He's back going. Well, now listen. The logs got serious coming faster than I could haul them out of there.
Damn.
He gave me 49 logs.
Wow.
Some red oak, some poplar, some pine. And I finished this basement. Everything you see in this basement, I made it.
Wow.
I made it. My son had bought a new house out in Loganville, and I heard him tell somebody one day, he said, me and Daddy's going to finish my basement. And I thought, that's the first I heard of that. Okay. So we went out there, and I finished his basement for him. I mean, it's nice. At the time, my wife was a real estate agent, and I called her one day, and I said, when you sell a house in the subdivision, what do you charge the people to finish the basement? She said, $70 a foot. My son had his basement was 2,265 feet. I finished it, and it cost him $9 a foot.
Man.
Every piece of it down in there come from a log with him. Now, the construction 2x4 stuff we bought, but all the trim stuff inside. In fact, we was in the bathroom. I said, boy, right here's a good place for a linen closet. He said, Dave, where in the world did you get a door for that? I said, son, I'll make a door. He said, you can make a door? I said, I can make a door. And I made him the nicest door to go there you ever seen. A raised 6-panel door. And pretty cool. But I just got started doing it, and one thing led to another, and the next thing you know, I'd be a little deeper, and a little deeper, and a little deeper, and I got pretty good at that, quite actually.
I tell you, when you spent your whole life racing, and I know I've dealt with this, and you give it up, you got to have something to put that energy toward, because it don't go away.
No, it don't.
So it's good that you found something like that. And
now, what I did, I went to Florida and bought me a condo.
Mm-hmm.
Been down there 13 years now. I bought a condo right on North Lagoon in Panama City Beach. I walk right out my back door of the condo, down the dock, get in my boat, and go offshore.
Wow.
Funny thing about that, when I first got that boat, it's a 2610 Proline with twin 200s on it, and one of the motors was messing up. And first thing you know, I'm not a 2-stroke mechanic, but I'm doing my own work. They won't allow somebody to come in and do it because they got a shop there. They want to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
And the shop foreman come by and said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm putting in a water pump." "You can do that?" I said, "Well, yeah, I can put in a water pump." And one day it was running hot, and I'd went over to Paul's Marine over in town on Harrison, and it had all my sensors and thermostats and everything. And the guy says, "Whose stuff is this right here?" I said, "That's mine." He said, "Looks like somebody shotgunning something to me." I said, "Yes, sir." He said, what's going on? I said, running hot. He said, well, that stuff right there won't make it run hot. I won't say, that ain't nothing wrong with that stuff. I guarantee you everything you got laying there, there's nothing wrong with it. He said, you need a poppet valve. I said, okay. Need a poppet valve. He said, come over here and let me show you on the computer. And he pulled up a schematic, even printed it out for me. Yeah. He said, that won't cost about $12. So I'm back over there, and I got the lower part of the cowling off the motor. I got that thing disassembled now. The shop foreman come by and walked. He said, what are you doing? I said, I'm putting in a poppet valve. He said, what is a poppet valve? I said, you're the shop foreman and you don't know what a poppet valve is? Like I'm supposed to know. And that's pretty funny, but it solved the problem. It fixed it. So I got to where now, when it breaks down, I go to work on it.
Yeah.
I even went as far as one of the mechanics up there come by, a motor just like mine. The power head and everything run, but the center section of the motor is froze up. It won't turn. Mm-hmm. And I bought that thing from him for a parts motor. And I was having trouble with my motor, and I started shotgunning it, I replaced one thing at a time till I fixed it. Huh. And I took everything off that parts motor, one thing at a time. The switch boxes, everything.
Gosh.
Now, I think it got about 1 million wires when you look at it, and they go every which way. I took everything off. I fixed that thing. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen some of the pictures of some of the fish you've caught down there. So you've been doing pretty good in the fishing department too.
Yeah. Old fella that lived below me, Mr. Gordon. He was a doctor with the VA, and he was gracious enough to give me some of his spots, his waypoints. And I took them waypoints and then expanded on them as time went on. And that's what got me started. Well, I love it.
Yeah.
I've been out there when it's like a piece of glass. I've been out there in 10-foot seas.
Ooh. It
wasn't pretty. When you go down in the trough, you could see the water. You couldn't see out of it. You couldn't see out of the trough. And when the boat would fall off the side of that wave, the wall of water is running within about 2 inches of the side of the boat. Oof. And it's sliding down sideways. Well, I'd turn it so it'd go into the bottom of the trough nose first. And I'd have to back off the throttle to just let it slide down. And when it would hit, I'd throttle it back up and turn it and then drive it back out of the wave. Mm-hmm. I noticed one of the boys was with me. He'd grimace every now and then. He'd draw up. And I said, Chuck, what's the matter? He said, when we land in the bottom, he said, that port engine goes completely underwater.
Ooh.
Oh, is that rough?
Gosh.
So I drove her out of it and come on home with it. But I'm real careful about going out there.
Yeah. Well, Sandy, we miss seeing you at the racetrack, but it sounds like you got a lot of stuff to keep you busy. But I just want to tell you, I really appreciate you sitting down with me today and talking with us. Miss seeing you at the racetrack, but
well, I appreciate that.
You've had an incredible career, and you've learned a lot. And you're like I said, you're one of the smartest guys I know in racing. And I know you spent a lot of time under the tutelage of Pete Hamilton and Ray Stonkus and Baird and Trivet and a lot of those guys. And you're one of the fingers on that hand I was talking about of people that's been successful in both dirt and asphalt. So you've definitely had a great career, and I appreciate you sitting down with us today.
Well, you're welcome.
Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed today's podcast as much as I did. Sandy Goss's story is about hard work and innovation. Sandy's accomplishments and talents never cease to amaze me. And interviewing him, well, that's definitely one of the highlights of my racing career. You can find out more about the True Racers podcast at our website, TrueRacersPodcast.com. There you'll find pictures and stories and all of our past podcast episodes. Also check out some of our features, such as True Racer Spotlight and our new feature, Young True Racers, where we highlight young up-and-coming racers trying to make their way in the sport. I'm sure you'll enjoy them. Now, if you have any comments or suggestions, send us a message on the contact page. Or if you'd like to leave a voice message, click on the red and white mic on the right side of the screen and let us know what's on your mind. You'll find all that at the TrueRacersPodcast.com. Oh, and don't forget to hit the red subscribe button on the right of your screen to receive alerts when new episodes are available. Now, racing season is here, folks, so you know what we do. Get out and support your local racetracks and support those true racers. So until next time, thank you and goodbye.